My family pushed me and my 6-year-old daughter off a cliff we survived hiding in the mud. She whispered, "Mom, they wanted your insurance money. Just for $3 million? They were so wrong." My name is Bella. I'm 34 years old, a lab technician working at a private medical center in Oregon. My day starts at 6 a.m. I drop off my 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, at the elementary school near our house, then head to the lab to face trays of blood, urine, and nameless analysis forms. It's not a glamorous job, but I love it because I see my value in precision, quiet diligence, and consistency. Ellie is the one thing I'm most proud of in my life. She has her father's soft brown curls and my green eyes always full of light. Every afternoon after work, I try to pick her up myself instead of letting the school bus bring her home. That moment when she runs to me arms wide, eager to show me a drawing or a new song from music class is when I feel most like a mother. My husband, Dean, used to be the man I believed was my soulmate. He works in real estate, often traveling to oversee new housing developments in distant suburbs. Dean used to be gentle, warm, and driven, but lately, I felt him pulling away. He's been coming home late, blaming last-minute client meetings on weekends we could have spent together as a family. Every time Ellie runs to him with a picture, he just nods absent-mindedly and looks back at his phone. Sometimes, I feel like I'm just the maid in my own home. My parents, Walter and Nora, live just about a 20-minute drive away. They're retired now, living in a cabin by Crescent Lake. I've always believed their love for Ellie was genuine. They'd bake cookies, turn on cartoons, and sit for hours listening to her school stories. But recently, something has shifted in the way my mom looks at Ellie. It's not exactly cold, but cautious. Like, Ellie is something she'd rather not touch. My older sister, Vanessa, is the complete opposite. She's 5 years older than me, was prom queen in high school, and now works as a marketing director for a major cosmetics company in Seattle. Vanessa never married, has no children, and often jokes that I live like an old lady. Still, she never misses a family dinner, always dressed to impress, casually talking about her business trips to Paris or Milan like it's no big deal. 2 weeks ago at dinner, just as we were gathering around Dad's grilled ribs, Vanessa made a strange suggestion. "Have you ever thought Ellie might do better somewhere else? Like Seattle? Great private schools. She could stay with me for a few months." I stared at her, stunned. "What are you talking about? She's only 6, and I'm her mother." Vanessa smiled, but it didn't warn me like it used to. "I'm just thinking about her future. You're busy. Dean's always away. I just want to help." I didn't respond. But that night, lying next to a sleeping Ellie, a strange unease took over me. Dean's late nights, my mom's strange looks, Vanessa's words, they were like puzzle pieces, scattered but slowly forming a picture I didn't want to see. The next morning, while I was washing Ellie's hair in the bathroom, she looked up at me and asked, "Mom, if one day I don't live with you anymore, will you be sad?" My heart stopped. "Who told you that?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "Grandma's friend's granddaughter said so, that I'll go to a faraway school and live with someone named V." She didn't finish, but I already knew the name. Vanessa. What I didn't know was that this was just the beginning of something bigger, a plan that had been in motion for a while, a plan where Ellie was the centerpiece. 3 days after Ellie asked that strange question, Dean came home after 10 p.m. I was sitting at the kitchen table, lights still on, dinner cold. He walked in, hung up his coat, and said the line I could now recite in my head. "Sorry, a client extended the meeting again." I didn't ask anything. I got up, served him dinner, and sat back down. I didn't want to fight. Not because I was weak, but because sometimes silence is the only way to hear what people are hiding. Dean ate without a word, eyes glued to his phone. At one point, he turned away while texting, and for a split second, I saw a name flash in the reflection on the glass cabinet. V. Callback. Vanessa. The name froze me. I couldn't be certain, but my instincts, as a mother, as a wife, told me something was very wrong. The next day, when I picked up Ellie, her teacher told me something that made me freeze. Ellie said she had trouble sleeping. She mentioned someone told her she might have to move and live away from you. "Bella, is everything okay?" I forced a reassuring smile, thanked her, and rushed Ellie home, but my mind was racing. I didn't tell Dean. Instead, I called my mom. "Mom, has Vanessa said anything about Ellie lately?" There was a long pause before she replied. "She's just been talking about the future, Bella. She thinks Ellie deserves a better school. But no one has the right to talk about her future except me," I said, unable to hide my frustration. My mom sighed. "Bella, you're a good mom, but you're stretched thin. Dean's always working. And Vanessa, she's just trying to help." I was starting to hate that word. 2 days later, Vanessa dropped by around lunchtime. I had just gotten back from the lab. Dean was meeting a client. Vanessa brought 2 lattes and a bag with kids' clothes. I went shopping. She smiled, setting the bag down. "I thought Ellie would love this purple dress." I didn't touch the coffee or open the bag. I looked her in the eyes. "What are you doing, Vanessa?" She blinked, then gave a light laugh. "What? I'm just bringing gifts for my niece. I'm trying to convince everyone that she should live with you away from her own mother." "Is that what you're doing?" Vanessa set her cup down harder than usual, but kept her voice smooth. "Bella, you're overreacting. Do you know how much pressure Dean is under? Mom and Dad worry too. We all just want what's best for Ellie. What's best is for her to stay with her mother." A crooked smile flickered across Vanessa's face. Not the sister I used to know. That smile chilled me. "If you think being a mother means you get to decide everything, you're mistaken. Children aren't property. That night, I found an unopened envelope in Dean's coat pocket. It was from a law firm in Seattle. Inside, documents about child custody consultation and a draft agreement for temporary guardianship transfer. I sat alone in the living room. The house was so silent I could hear the clock ticking. Only one question echoed in my head. How are they planning to take my daughter away from me? Ellie was asleep in her room, clutching her stuffed bunny like always. But this time, I couldn't calmly watch her sleep the way I used to. A storm was coming, and it wasn't from the outside, but from the very people who shared my blood. I knew I couldn't stay still anymore because I wasn't just protecting Ellie from a plan. I was protecting her from a world I once believed was family. That Saturday, my mom called, her voice full of cheer. Bella, this weekend, we're planning a picnic at Crater Ridge National Park. It's not too far, just about a 2-hour drive. We'll all hike along the little creek and watch the leaves fall. Ellie's going to love it. I didn't even have time to respond before she added, Vanessa's coming too. Your dad's already packed lunch. You just need to get yourself and Ellie ready. I paused for a few seconds, feeling something off. My family was never the outdoorsy type, and they definitely didn't plan last-minute outings in the chilly fall. But then Ellie jumped up on the chair, having overheard, and shouted, Mom, Mom, I want to go. I'll bring my magnifying glass. Maybe I'll find a rare red leaf. I smiled and patted her head. How could I say no when her eyes sparkled like that? That night, I told Dean about the trip. He closed his laptop, slightly frowning. Saturday? I've got a site visit with a new investor. Probably won't make it. I wasn't surprised. These meetings had been showing up as often as fallen leaves. I nodded. Then I'll take Ellie. But, Dean, do you feel like something's changed in our family? He was quiet for a moment, then said, You're probably just overthinking. Either way, some fresh air might do you good. Saturday morning, I woke up early and packed sandwiches, fruit, water, and even a few bandages. I always carry a first aid kit on trips like this. My job has made me cautious by habit. Ellie wore her green beanie and showed off the tiny magnifying glass hanging around her neck. She was genuinely excited. My parents' car arrived on time. Dad was driving, Mom in the passenger seat, and Vanessa in the back, next to Ellie and me. Vanessa wore a trendy athletic outfit and expensive hiking shoes. Odd, considering I'd never seen her go on a hike before, but I didn't ask. I just observed. The weather was crisp, sunlight filtering softly through the trees. We walked along winding trails, eventually reaching a narrow dirt path into a sparse forest. Dad said, This is a newer route. Not many people know about it. The view is amazing. I felt uneasy. This path didn't match any of the old routes we used to take when I was a kid. Still, I said nothing. Ellie chattered beside me, pointing at every branch. Mom, this leaf looks like a heart. Vanessa occasionally glanced at me over her sunglasses. Each time I caught her, she turned away, pretending to check her phone. When I asked, Texting someone? She paused for a second, then smiled. Just checking the weather. Signal's bad up here. Then my mom chimed in. Today's going to be a special day, Bella, one you'll never forget. Even though she was smiling, her words made my skin crawl. My dad kept checking the rear view mirror, his eyes flicking from me and Ellie to the winding road ahead. We stopped at an open clearing near the edge of a gentle slope. In the distance, a valley of pine trees spread out, dotted with orange and red leaves. The breeze was light, the air clean, but my unease wouldn't go away. Dad parked the car, turned off the engine, and said, From here, it's about a 20-minute walk to this cliff with a breathtaking view. No one in the family's been there yet. I slung the backpack over my shoulder, held Ellie's hand, and followed them. As we entered a denser patch of trees, Vanessa fell back to walk beside me and suddenly asked, Have you ever thought about sending Ellie to boarding school? I stopped cold. That question wasn't random. No. And I have no plans to. Vanessa shrugged. There are some things you can't control forever, Bella. Life changes fast. It didn't sound threatening, but it made my skin prickle. Just then, Ellie ran ahead, then turned back and called out, Mom, there's a high spot up here. You can see the whole mountain. Before I could answer, my parents and Vanessa had already moved toward the edge of the cliff. That's when I realized none of them had brought much. Just a few water bottles, no blankets, no food, no maps, not even a compass. I gripped Ellie's hand tighter, feeling my heart pounding. And then I saw my mother give Vanessa a signal with her eyes. I slowed down, pulling Ellie closer as we neared the edge. From here, the entire Crater Ridge Valley came into view, sunlight slicing through distant trees. It was peaceful, eerily so, like nature itself was trying to distract me. Dad stood right at the edge, pointing out ahead. See that, Bella? If we go just a bit further, there's another ledge that sticks out. The view from there is incredible. I went once. I nodded faintly, but my eyes never left Mom's hand tight around her nearly empty backpack. Vanessa stepped closer, then placed a hand on my shoulder, giving it a light squeeze. Ever wonder if life could be easier, Bella? I turned to her. My eyes filled with suspicion. What are you talking about? She didn't answer right away, just smiled. And that smile, once familiar, now held nothing warm. Then suddenly she reached for my arm. I recoiled, instinctively pulling Ellie back. Get your hand off me, Vanessa. Bella, I need to show you something. Just for a second. Before she could finish, my dad stepped toward Ellie. She looked up and smiled. Grandpa, did you see the eagle? Of course, sweetheart. Come here, I'll show you. He bent down, lifted her in his arms, and began walking toward the edge. It all happened in seconds, but to me, it felt like time stopped. I screamed, "Stop, put her down." But before I could lunge forward, my mother shoved me hard from behind. The force sent me stumbling, my foot slipping on the uneven ground. I nearly lost my balance, my hands flailing until one managed to grip a small branch growing along the cliff's edge. Vanessa stepped closer, her face ice cold. Her voice dropped low. "I'm sorry, Bella, but this is necessary. It'll be over quickly." I struggled to stay upright, heart pounding. My eyes locked on Ellie writhing in my father's arms. "Dad, put her down. She's your granddaughter." But he didn't flinch. In fact, his expression was calm, eerily so. "She won't remember any of this. It'll be over soon, Bella, for both of you." Panic exploded in my chest. I didn't need more proof. This wasn't some staged accident. This was a plan, a carefully orchestrated plot with Ellie and me as the targets. In a split second, I threw myself forward, hurling my body into the air. As my hands reached Ellie's dangling legs, I pulled her toward me with every ounce of strength I had left. My father lost his balance, stumbled, and I completely lost my footing. Everything after that was wind roaring in my ears and the blue sky spinning. I wrapped my arms tightly around Ellie, curling myself around her like a living shield. She screamed into the wind. "Mommy!" I didn't answer. I just held her close as if somehow a mother's love could slow the fall. We hit tree branches, slammed against jagged rocks. Pain burst through my shoulder, my back, my legs. I couldn't tell where I was injured. I just knew I still had Ellie in my arms. When we finally landed on damp earth at the bottom of the cliff, I felt blood running from my forehead into my eyes, blurring everything. But Ellie was still in my arms. Her tiny body trembled, but she was alive. I whispered, barely audible, "Are you okay, Ellie? Mommy? I'm scared." I couldn't say anything more. Darkness swept over me, but I knew I had to stay awake. I had to survive because I wasn't just a mother. I was Ellie's only anchor left in this world. They couldn't stop me from falling, but I wouldn't let them bury the truth. Pain screamed through my body, locking me in place. My left eye was swollen shut, my head spinning. My left wrist felt broken, and I couldn't feel my right leg. The smell of blood mixed with damp soil filled my nose. I was still cradling Ellie, her faint breath warm against my neck. I slowly opened my eyes, careful not to move too much. Trees loomed above us, their branches filtering in pale light. The air was unnervingly silent. I swallowed hard and turned my head. Ellie was staring at me, eyes brimming with tears. She whispered, her voice tight. "Mom? Are we gonna die?" I shook my head even though the motion sent a jolt of pain through my shoulder. "No, I'm here with you, and we're going to live." Ellie trembled, then buried her face into my chest. We lay still like that for a while until I heard faint voices above us. Whispers from the clifftop. "Do you see anything?" My mother's voice. "No. Not moving," my father replied flatly. "Good. No one comes out here. No one's going to find them." Vanessa's voice sounded relieved, but also oddly unsure. I quickly pressed my hand over Ellie's mouth, signaling her to stay quiet. She nodded immediately, tucking her face into my shirt. "Let's go. If they're alive, they're not getting out of here anyway," my mom added. I held my breath, heart pounding as their footsteps faded into the distance. When I was sure they were gone, I loosened my hand. Ellie looked up at me and whispered, "Mom, what if they come back and find out we're alive? Maybe we should pretend we're not." I stared at her speechless. She was only 6, yet somehow she understood just how dangerous this was. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, let's stay still for a little longer, okay?" She nodded. I pulled her close, shut my eyes, and kept our bodies as still as possible. Time stopped in that forest. Only the sound of wind and the distant call of birds. I listened to every beat of her small heart beside mine, while anger slowly spread through my veins. Not from the fall, but from the betrayal. My parents, Vanessa, the man I once loved, all of them had joined forces to plan this, to eliminate us like we were just obstacles. After a while, Ellie lifted her head. Her eyes were teary but clear. "Mom, I think I know what they're doing." "What do you mean, Ellie?" I whispered back. "I heard Aunt Vanessa talking to Dad when I was playing hide and seek in the garden. I was hiding behind the rose bushes. She said, it'll all be over soon. We just need Bella to agree to the picnic." Dad said, "Just do what we planned. The insurance money's coming." I froze. It felt like someone punched me in the chest. They hadn't just wanted us gone. They had counted on the life insurance. "I didn't tell you before because I thought they were joking. I'm sorry." I hugged her tightly, forcing my voice to stay steady. "It's okay, Ellie. You've been so brave. I'm proud of you." I checked the backpack. Most of our supplies had flown out during the fall, but thankfully, there was a dry towel and one bottle of water left. I cleaned the scrape on Ellie's cheek before turning to assess my leg. The pain shot through me when I tried to lift my right leg. It nearly made me black out. I bit down hard, drawing blood to keep from crying out. It felt broken. My left wrist was badly swollen, barely usable, but I still had my right hand, my mind, and I had Ellie. We needed rescue. But my phone, if it had survived, was probably smashed or lost somewhere on the steep slope. I turned to Ellie. "I can't walk fast, but you can. You might be able to find the path back, but only if it's really safe." "Okay?" Ellie shook her head immediately, eyes filling with tears. "No, I'm not leaving you alone." I smiled faintly, my face pale from the pain. "Then we'll go together. Little by little, I'll lean on you and we'll get out of here together. Ellie nodded firmly. I broke off a branch to use as a crutch, leaning on it and on my daughter as we began to inch away from danger. Every step was agony, but I didn't stop. Because I knew once we made it out alive, the truth would come to light, and this time, no one, not even family, would be able to hide what they'd done. Ellie and I walked through the forest for 3 hours. Every step was a battle between blinding pain and the will to survive. There were moments I wanted to collapse right there and let it all end. But every time, Ellie held my hand and whispered, "Mommy, we're almost out." I gripped her hand tighter and kept going. By late afternoon, we were lucky enough to come across an elderly couple camping near a small creek. The woman, Mrs. Margaret, nearly jumped up when she saw me covered in blood and limping, while Ellie dropped to the ground, completely exhausted. "Can you hear me?" the man asked. I opened my mouth, but the words caught in my throat. "I can't talk." After that, everything became a haze. I barely remember the sound of sirens growing louder, Ellie's small hand wrapped tightly around mine, and her calm voice telling the paramedics that I had protected us. 3 days passed before I regained consciousness in a hospital room. My arm was in a cast, my leg propped up on pillows, and layers of bandages covered the cuts and bruises across my body. Ellie was curled up in a chair beside me, asleep, her tangled hair falling over the face I cherished more than anything. A man in civilian clothes sat quietly next to my bed. He carried the calm but firm demeanor of someone used to difficult conversations. Though his expression was serious, his eyes held a quiet kindness. He introduced himself as Detective Callahan from the Oakfield County Police Department and gently explained that he needed to ask me a few questions about what had happened. Despite the pain, I nodded and began recounting everything. Our family outing, Vanessa's strange behavior, and the terrifying fall that nearly ended my life. I spoke slowly but clearly, determined to leave out nothing. When I got to the part where Ellie overheard Dean and Vanessa talking, I saw Callahan pause, scribbling quickly into his notebook. "Your daughter remembered their conversation clearly?" I nodded. "She's incredibly sharp, and I trust everything she told me." He sat back slightly and said, "We've already started reviewing your husband's financial records, and there's something you need to be aware of." He reached into his case and pulled out a file, flipping it open to a highlighted page. "4 months ago, Dean updated your life insurance policy. He raised it to $3 million, stating it was for emergency family protection. He listed himself as the sole beneficiary." A cold chill crept down my spine. $3 million. He nodded gravely. "And the witness who signed the amendment? Your sister, Vanessa G. Miller." My heart pounded, my head spinning with the realization. So they were in on it together, Dean and Vanessa. "Unfortunately, it goes deeper," Callahan said, cutting in. "We traced a bank transfer from your mother to Dean, made just 1 week before the incident. The memo line read, 'Final payment for the plan, amounting to $500,000. My breath caught in my throat. My parents, they were part of it too. Callahan didn't look away. "I'm sorry, Bella. All signs point to a conspiracy involving your husband, your sister, and your parents. The messages we found suggest they'd been coordinating this plan for over 6 months, likely intending to silence both you and your daughter." The walls around me seemed to close in. The people I had trusted most, my family, had plotted my demise. After a moment, Callahan continued, "We issued warrants for Dean and Vanessa immediately after you gave your statement. But when our team got to their locations, both had vanished. Dean's car was later found near a small private airstrip." My stomach dropped. This wasn't over. I could feel it. "Will you catch them?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "We've issued a federal warrant. In the meantime, I recommend that you and Ellie go into protective custody until we can ensure your safety," he said firmly. I looked at my daughter's sleeping face, still dotted with healing cuts, and felt a surge of strength rise within me. I was no longer the scared, broken woman who had fallen off a cliff. I had survived, and I would fight for justice with everything I had. 3 days later, I was moved to a secure recovery room with law enforcement stationed just outside. Ellie was placed temporarily under the care of a social worker while the investigation deepened. When Callahan returned, he was holding a much thicker case file. His face was set with purpose. This wasn't just a case to him anymore. It was personal. "We just got a hit from a toll booth camera 200 miles out. It captured Vanessa driving out of Oregon, likely heading toward Nevada. We've escalated the warrant to federal status." I gripped the edge of the bed even though my wrist was still bandaged. "What about Dean?" Callahan flipped to another page. "He's using an alias, but here's something interesting. When we checked flight history, we found he booked a private flight under the name Daniel Morrison. The departure time matches when they disappeared, but the flight was canceled at the last minute, possibly because he suspected we were onto him." I exhaled slowly. They weren't free yet. The next day, I was allowed to meet with a government-appointed attorney. During our first session, he confirmed, "We have complete financial records, your daughter's testimony, and recovered text messages between Dean and Vanessa from Dean's old phone, which the police found in his abandoned car. This case has enough evidence to charge them with attempted murder, conspiracy, and insurance fraud." Just then, the door opened. Ellie walked in with a female social worker. She ran over, throwing her arms around me, her face lighting up despite the bandages on her cheeks. "Mommy, I told Detective Callahan everything. I remember it all." I blinked in surprise. "You gave a statement?" Ellie nodded, then looked over at Callahan who had entered behind her. He smiled. "This little girl is so sharp and composed." Our investigators were stunned. She recounted everything she heard, Vanessa's call with Dean and even the conversation between Mrs. Nora and Mr. Walter about how everything would be fine if Bella just didn't push back. I looked at my daughter, torn between heartbreak and pride. She was only 6, yet she was the key to unraveling everything that had been hidden. "Were you scared?" I asked softly. Ellie shook her head. "No, I just thought, if I told the truth, then you wouldn't have to be scared anymore." I held my daughter tightly, feeling each tiny breath begin to steady against my chest. Everything wasn't over yet, but I knew we were finally heading in the right direction. 2 days later, the police found Dean hiding out in a small cash-only rental cabin on the edge of Nevada. They raided the place at dawn and arrested him while he was trying to burn papers and destroy his laptop. Vanessa was arrested later that afternoon at a roadside gas station. She'd been trying to swap vehicles through an off-the-record deal, but was recognized by a security camera. That evening, Callahan gave a short update. Both are in custody and being extradited back to Oregon. As for your parents, Walter and Nora, we've issued subpoenas. They were recorded in a call with Dean discussing a split agreement. It's undeniable. I looked out the hospital window, the late afternoon sun casting soft light through the trees. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel afraid. 3 days later, we were officially discharged, but the police advised that Ellie and I move into a secured witness protection residence until the trial. In a closed press briefing, police confirmed. Evidence confirms this was a coordinated murder plot to obtain a $3 million life insurance payout. The 6-year-old girl is not only the sole surviving witness, but the key to uncovering the entire plan. I held Ellie's hand tightly as we watched the broadcast on TV. We were in an unfamiliar place under 24/7 protection, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone, because now the truth was finally on our side. 8 months after Ellie and I survived the fall at Crater Ridge, the trial of Dean, Vanessa, and my parents officially began at Oakfield County Courthouse. The whole small town buzzed with disbelief. No one could imagine that a seemingly perfect family was now facing charges of attempted murder. On the first day, I arrived in a wheelchair, my arm still in a brace from a fracture that hadn't fully healed. Ellie sat beside me, gripping my hand, wearing a sky blue dress she chose because it's Mommy's favorite color. I didn't cry, and I wasn't afraid. What I brought to court was the truth and the unwavering strength of a mother who couldn't be broken by betrayal. Dean entered in a gray suit, expressionless. Vanessa followed, hair tied neatly, her eyes gliding past me like I was a stranger. My parents, Walter and Nora, kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I was used to that look. I'd grown up with it. The prosecutor opened with a sharp indictment, laying out detailed evidence of the murder plot, insurance fraud, and endangerment of a minor. Every fact cut like a knife, but I sat calmly. I had survived to expose this truth. I was called to testify on the second day. The courtroom was silent as I recounted everything. The trip, the fall, the unbearable pain, and the unforgivable betrayal. I didn't cry. My voice was steady. I looked Dean in the eye and said, "You didn't kill me, and you'll never get what you wanted because Ellie is not something you can trade for money." Vanessa kept her head down. She never once looked at me. That day, Ellie also testified, but through a pre-recorded video since she was still under child witness protection. In the video, her voice was small, but clear. I heard Aunt Vanessa tell my dad that Mommy and I wouldn't be here anymore if everything went right. I was really scared, but I trusted Mommy. She protected me. She's a good person. No one in the courtroom could hold back tears, not even the judge. During their defense, Dean stood up, voice bitter and defensive. I was pushed into a corner. Bella wasn't the woman I once loved. She controlled everything. I just wanted freedom to escape that suffocating life. Vanessa wasn't any softer. Bella always acted like she was right, the victim. But if she weren't around, Dean would have been happy. We just wanted to be free. I sat quietly. Their words no longer hurt me. In fact, they only revealed the depth of their guilt. It wasn't just murder they attempted. It was complete denial of accountability. When asked if they had any last words before sentencing, my parents said nothing about me or Ellie. My father only mumbled, "We just thought she didn't deserve that life." The judge struck the gavel 3 times. The air in the courtroom froze as the verdict was read. Defendants Dean Carter and Vanessa G. Miller are sentenced to 25 years in prison for first-degree attempted murder and are barred from contacting any witnesses post-Kalish. Defendants Walter and Nora G. Miller are sentenced to 15 years for conspiracy to commit murder and child endangerment. I closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding my whole life. I wasn't happy. I wasn't sad, just relieved. Justice had finally spoken the names of the people who once called me daughter. After the trial, dozens of strangers approached me and Ellie, former neighbors, old friends, even people I'd never met, hugging us, offering words of support saying, "You survived," for all those who were too afraid to speak. I didn't say a word. I just leaned down, hugged Ellie close, and whispered in her ear, "We did it, Ellie. Now it's time to start truly living." After the trial, Ellie and I didn't return to our old home in Oregon. The police advised us to remain under witness protection until all threats were cleared. But I requested a transfer to somewhere far away, somewhere without memories, somewhere no one knew our names, somewhere Ellie could start over. With help from my attorney and a domestic abuse survivor support group, I reconnected with an old friend, Grace, a high school classmate I hadn't spoken to in nearly 10 years. When she heard what had happened, she didn't ask for details. She just said over the phone, "Come here. Stay as long as you need." Evergreen Valley, Colorado welcomed us on an early spring morning. The snow hadn't fully melted, but new buds were already pushing through the earth. Grace lived with her husband and 2 young kids in a cabin on the edge of the woods, about a 15-minute drive from town. The air was peaceful, strangely quiet, and for the first time in ages, I saw Ellie sleep through the night without waking up. I began working part-time at a small clinic downtown. Dr. Caroline, the owner, was an older woman, stern, but compassionate. During our first meeting, she looked at me for a long moment, then said, "I don't need to know your past, but I see the caution in your eyes, and that's what patients need. If you're willing, you've got a job here." I nodded, unable to hide my gratitude. The work wasn't much, but it gave me rhythm again. The sound of blood pressure monitors, the click of drawers, the scent of antiseptic, these things gave me back a sense of control after so long drowning in chaos. Ellie was enrolled at a small elementary school just down the road from Grace's house. At first, she was shy, quiet, often sitting alone during recess. But just a few weeks in, her teacher called me and said, "Today, Ellie drew a picture of her family." It was of a little girl holding hands with a woman standing under the sun. When I asked, she said, "That's me and my mom because we walked through a really dark night." I was silent for a long moment, eyes stinging. Then I simply said, "Thank you for telling me." Ellie and I began seeing a trauma therapist once a week. Her name was Dr. Helen Monroe, a specialist in working with survivors. She didn't ask direct questions. Instead, she let Ellie draw, play with sand, and describe her dreams in the simplest words. With me, she only said, "Don't force yourself to forgive. Focus on the one thing worth keeping: survival." Week by week, I watched Ellie begin to smile more. She started telling me stories from class about how Jason spilled milk on his shirt and didn't cry, or how the teacher read books in a funny voice. Simple things, small things. But to me, they were proof she was becoming a child again. One Friday afternoon, I was cooking dinner with Grace in the warm kitchen when Ellie came running in, cheeks pink from the wind. "Mom, we're going on a field trip tomorrow. The teacher said you can come if you want." I looked at her and suddenly remembered myself in the forest. Hands bloodied, back aching, never letting go of my daughter for even a second. I smiled. "Of course, I'll come. You and me. We always go together." That night, after Ellie had fallen asleep, I stepped out onto the porch, leaning against the wooden railing, gazing up at a sky full of stars. I thought about everything I'd lost, a family that no longer felt like one, a marriage that once seemed perfect, and the people who had once called me daughter, sister. But then I thought about what I still had: a brave little girl, real friends, and a second chance. In a place where no one knew my name, and where I could live without fear. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and for the first time in years, I felt light. It happened naturally, as if everything had been quietly aligning without any of us noticing. The first person to strike up a conversation was Mr. David Clark, the principal at Ellie's school. I met him during a parent meeting about 3 months after Ellie started school in Evergreen Valley. David was tall with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes behind thin-rimmed glasses. He radiated patience and warmth, qualities I hadn't seen in a man for many years. After the meeting, he caught me in the hallway as I struggled to untangle Ellie's jacket from a door handle. "You're Ellie's mom, right?" "I'm David Clark, the principal. I just wanted to say she's a wonderful student." I smiled, still a little guarded. "Thank you. She's trying really hard to catch up." He looked at me for a moment, then said gently, "You don't need to explain anything. Here, we don't care about anyone's past. All we care about is that today," Ellie smiled, "on the playground." After that day, I saw Mr. David more often when picking Ellie up. At first, we exchanged brief greetings. Then our conversations grew longer, deeper. I told him about my work at the clinic, about Ellie and our journey. He told me about his years teaching math before becoming a principal, and why he chose to stay in a small town instead of moving to the city. David never asked about the scars on my arms or why Ellie sometimes woke up screaming in the night. He just listened when I was ready to speak and sat in silence when I needed space to heal. Ellie's 8th birthday came on a softly snowy day. I'd planned a small gathering in Grace's backyard, but Grace had secretly invited neighbors, my co-workers from the clinic, and even Mr. David and a few teachers from school. Ellie wore a light purple dress. The color, she said, looked like the sky when I hugged Mommy at sunset. She ran around the yard among laughter, balloons, cake, and bright-colored gift boxes. Her face glowed like winter sunlight. I stood in the kitchen watching through the window as David knelt to help Ellie retie the scarf slipping from her neck. They were both laughing, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel left behind. After the party, as guests slowly left, David stayed behind to help clean up. I was loading dishes into the sink when he handed me a small envelope. "This is a little gift from the school. We do this for all our students who've been through tough times. Nothing big. Just a couple movie tickets and a new book." I took the envelope so moved I nearly teared up, but David didn't leave right away. He stood still for a moment, then looked at me seriously. "Bella, I don't know what brought you here, but I do know this. What you and your daughter brought to this place is something truly special. Strength, hope, and kindness." I said nothing, my fingers tightening around the envelope. "Do you believe family can be something we create, not just something we're born into?" I asked. David didn't answer right away, but the look in his eyes, deep and gentle, was a more perfect answer than any words could have been. That night, as I tucked Ellie into bed, she reached for my hand and whispered, "Mom, can I call Mr. David Uncle? He's kind, like he's part of our family." I smiled softly and nodded. "You can call him anything you want, sweetheart. as long as you feel safe and happy. I stood quietly by the bedroom window, watching the snow fall outside the porch. Each white flake drifted down like it was softly covering the traces of everything we'd left behind. And I knew Ellie was right. Family doesn't have to be the people we share blood with. Family is where someone waits for us to step out of the dark with kindness, patience, and unconditional love. And I had found that kind of family in Ellie's eyes, in the embrace of friends, and in a man who gently tied a scarf for an 8-year-old girl with all his heart. Our story, Ellie's and mine, isn't just about survival. It's proof that sometimes real family doesn't come from blood, but from the people who choose to love and stay. We lost everything only to find what truly matters: freedom, peace, and trust. In a world full of uncertainty, I've learned that no matter how dark the past may be, with love and faith, we can rewrite our lives even from the most shattered pieces. What do you think about Bella and Ellie's journey? Is real family defined by blood or by love and choice? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and resilience.